What's good, everybody? This is Boxingwave, and we are back with the Wave Report, episode 4. All right, where we're just gonna brush over a few boxing topics from the last few days. Listen, real quick. I know I haven't been live much lately, but I've been putting out more content lately. All right, and I think this is the most amount of content I've done all year within a month. All right, so I apologize for not being live a lot. I'm still dealing with my busy in life schedule, but I've been able to put more content out, but going live a lot less. I've only gone live during the live commentaries that I've done, and maybe just like one or two other videos outside of that. But as soon as I get some more downtime, I will be able to go live a little bit more and interact with you guys. I think that's the only thing that's hard that I miss, is reading the comments and getting the feedback from you guys right there. So anyway, let's talk. Let's start out this video with a rest in peace, a huge rest in peace to another boxing legend in Steve Smoger, who passed away earlier this week. All right, 79 years old. And this is coming like 2 weeks after Mills Lane, another huge boxing legend in the sport. I did put up a video dedicated to Mills Lane where I talked a little bit about his life, and then I went into some of my favorite moments throughout his career. And that video's up, so be sure to check that out if you haven't already. Not a lot of views, but I wasn't expecting it. It's not no drama or anything out there. But rest in peace to Steve Smoger. And plenty of very experienced. This is one of the referees that whenever people talk about who's their favorite referee, his name comes up often. Over the years of me doing content on his channel and whatever, we had conversations talking about different referees, his name always came up because he was a referee that many of us felt was fair, and he would let the fight go. He wouldn't intervene too much in a fight unless he had to. And whenever he did intervene, he was fair, and he was very clear on his instructions. So if he took points from you, it's probably because he warned you a good amount of times before he got to that point where he had to take points. But he was very, very fair. He was very clear, and he wouldn't intervene in a fight unless he really had to. Unless there was a lot of holding or some foul play, he wouldn't. He would let the fighters fight, and he wasn't the type of guy that was known for having like premature stoppages. So rest in peace to Steve Smoger. He was a guy that had over 200 professional fights. He officiated over 200 professional fights. Professional title fights. Title fights. Had over 1,000 pro fights. All right, over 30 years of professional refereeing, and he was also a military vet. All right, he was in the Air Force as well. All right, and I wrote down a little list here of some of his fights that I actually remember growing up watching. This actually goes back into the 80s, the early 80s, but the ones that I actually grew up watching as a kid. I remember watching Mike McCallum versus James Toney live. He officiated the first and third fights, all right? The last Mike McCallum fight, all right, we know that James Toney won the second and third. The first one was a draw, but he officiated the first fight and the third fight. He also officiated Larry Holmes versus Ray Mercer, Roy Jones against B-Hop 1, which I remember clearly. I remember exactly where I was at when I watched that fight. Tito against B-Hop, and Mosley against Flores, and Jermaine Taylor against Kelly Pavlik. So the fights that I remember, like older fights, he was still officiating fights, I believe, up into, I think pro fights up until 2018, if I read correctly. But legend in the sport, rest in peace to him. 79 years of a good life, and he did his job all the way up into the end. And he's a 2015 Boxing Hall of Fame inductee, which was well deserved. Definitely should be in there. All right, so rest in peace to the legend Steve Smoger. And let's move to the next topic. All right, So real quick, let's speak on the news. Really fresh news. Oscar Rivas has suffered an eye injury and he will not be facing F.A. Ajagba in their January 14th showdown. And this was going to be a top rank event. This is going to be up at the Verona Casino, upstate in New York, in the area where the boxing, the International Boxing and Hall of Fame is at. All right, so which is usually a good event. You know, you guys know I've been up there a good amount of times, not just going to the Hall of Fame, but I've taken a 3.5 hour drive to stay at the casino. I love the casino there. You know, they have a couple lounges there. They have some good restaurants. There's things to do in the area. And the arena is not huge, but you can always get good seats. Being that it's a smaller arena, there's good seats wherever you get them. You know, if you're not trying to sit ringside, even if you sit in the stands, you're not going to be far away from the ring. You know, so I always tell people, especially if you're in the New York or the tri-state area, to take that trip, take a weekend trip up to the Verona Casino up in upstate New York, because the fights are good. But yeah, so I don't know any details on this eye injury. Okay, they didn't have any details in the articles that I read. Oscar Rivas suffered an eye injury and he's pulling out of the fight against F.A. Ajagba. Now, we don't know if they're going to find a replacement for Ajagba. They probably will, all right, but nothing's been confirmed as of right now. But it was a fight that was a good fight that I was looking forward to. I'm not going to lie. I was looking forward to it. I was actually surprised when I heard about it because I thought Oscar Rivas was like the Bridgerweight champion. And I don't know what was going on since that. You know, I know he wasn't, let me pull up his box rate. He wasn't active all year. All right, and the last fight was against Ryan Rozicki for that Bridgerweight title. And that was a great fight. I mean, if you guys didn't see that fight, that was a really, really good fight. And we haven't seen Oscar Rivas all year. He hasn't fought all year. And F.A. Ajagba, he had lost to Frank Sanchez, but he came back and fought a journeyman this year, all right, and picked up a second round knockout. Now, I'm hoping that Top Rank can work something out and maybe last minute find a decent opponent for F.A. because he definitely needs the rounds. But no details yet on Oscar Rivas. But I would like to see him back in the ring. You know, whether he's fighting Bridgerweight or heavyweight, I would like to see him back in the ring soon because he's pretty fun to watch. You know, he has knockout power and he's just a fun fighter to watch. I want to see him in there. I enjoy watching him. You know, I like his style and I think he's pretty exciting. And the same with F.A. Ajagba. We already know the puncher he is. That would have been a really, really fun fight. And I was actually looking forward to doing a breakdown for that fight. But now that we're not getting it, we just got to wait and see what happens from here. All right. But that's it for that. The next topic, and yeah, this is going to be a really short wave report today. Chris Colbert, he calls out Frank Martin. Now, they were supposed to fight prior to the Michelle Rivera fight. All right. Let me pull him up real quick. I don't know if Chris Colbert has been active. I think he might have had one fight since he lost to Hector Garcia. Oh, no, he hasn't. He hasn't been in the ring since Hector Garcia. All right. And that fight was in February. All right. So he hasn't been in the ring, but he was going to come back and fight Frank Martin and move up to 135 to fight Frank. And you know, I guess he pulled out of the fight. The fight didn't go down. I thought that was kind of a risky fight after coming back and losing the way he did, you know. And you know me, I don't care if fighters lose. It's about the way you lost. And I think the way he lost, I think a lot of people kind of turned their back on Chris because of the way he lost. You know, he came out exchanging and banging with Hector, but as soon as he got hurt and got dropped, it seemed like he was just kind of in survival mode at that point, and I think he ran the last couple of rounds or so. So it was the way that he lost the fight. It seemed like he didn't really try to turn the fight around. And after the post-fight interviews, it sounded like he was saying, like, look, You know, he didn't want to risk getting knocked out, so he did what he had to do and just moved and stuff. And I think he lost a lot of fans because of that. And not only that, and I always say this, when fighters do a lot of talking, when you perform that way after doing a lot of talking, all the talking that he's done, he's talked about a lot of fighters, especially on the PBC. And, you know, a lot of PBC fans, Wilder fans, Spence fans, a lot of them dislike Chris Colbert because he runs his mouth. He does talk a lot. And listen, I have no problem with fighters doing all that talking. Like, you talking, that's cool. As long as you back it up in the ring, I really don't care. But Chris does a lot of talking. And he went in that fight, got dominated, got dropped. And he just got schooled in that fight. And for him to come back and fight Frank Martin, even before the Michelle Rivera fight, I would have told you that that was a huge mistake. You know, I mean, I guess somebody put the bug in his ear, like, this is not the fight you take, especially you moving up to 135. It's just not the fight to take coming off of a loss like that. And, you know, taking a guy like Frank Martin, who in my opinion is probably even tougher scrap than Hector Garcia. You know, we'll see what Hector could do when he fights Tank in a couple weeks. But yeah, he calls out Frank Martin, you know, and I mean, listen, I give him credit because he seems, if he's serious about it, he seems to not want to take no easy touches. So I respect him for that. But I don't even know at this point, you know, with Chris losing to Hector Garcia, you know, I don't even know if he's a better fighter than Michelle Rivera, to me, you know. I mean, basically, I've been watching Chris for a long time. And, you know, before that loss, I would probably had rated Chris over Michelle Rivera because he's so versatile. He could switch. You know, he has some pop. And he's just overall a good boxer. I think if he were to fight Hector again, maybe he would do a little bit better, you know. Maybe he does a little bit better against Frank Martin than Michelle Rivera did. You know, I think the one thing about Michelle is that he didn't make any adjustments in the fight. You know, he kind of looked one-dimensional in that fight. And one thing about Chris Colbert I can say about him is he's not one-dimensional at all. So if he fights Frank, you know, I mean, I said this to you guys the other day. I'm expecting Frank Martin to fight maybe a Isaac Cruz or Rolly Romero. You know, I mean, if we're going to keep it in-house and be realistic, you know, he is a Showtime PBC fighter, you know, and he's under Errol Spence's promotions, if Man Down Promotions. So if he's going to stay in-house, I'm expecting the Isaac Cruz. I've said that there's multiple videos. They're saving Isaac Cruz for somebody. You know, for him to turn down Ryan, for him to turn down guys like Shakur Stevenson. They have something in store for him. I just don't know what it is yet. And it could be Frank Martin, or it could be like a Tank rematch if something were to happen with Tank and Ryan not going down or something like that. So with that being said, I don't think it's a bad fight between Martin and Chris. It's just that the fight isn't, being that Chris is coming off of the loss and hasn't even bounced back since, I'm not expecting many people to believe Chris to win. I would expect Frank Martin to be a pretty solid favorite over Chris right now. If this was where Chris was undefeated, then that would be a different question, you know, a different story, because going in a fight, Chris has been pretty damn good at 130. But at 135 against Frank right now, I don't really know. I really don't think he has good shot beating Frank, especially the way he fought. I think he's even a little bit better at being aggressive than Hector Garcia. I think styles make fights. And I think Frank Martin right now is probably a little bit tougher. All right, but at least with Chris, if they were to fight, if this fight were to really go down, at least with Chris, I know that he's a lot more versatile, and I think he can make adjustments, you know, mid-fight. All right, but I'm down to see it. I'm down to see it for sure, you know. And it's just, though, with Chris, it's a huge risk, because if he takes another loss, then people are going to really write him off, you know what I'm saying? Especially if he is to get dropped or stopped. You know, we know Frank got power, so, and he's at 135. He's proven at 135 at this point. All right, but I'm cool with whatever happens. Real quick, I'm going to go into Spence and Manny Pacquiao. Right? the new news is Errol Spence, he's come out and said that he's not going to fight Manny Pacquiao. All right, and I think he made a comment basically saying that I'm not gonna fight an older Manny Pacquiao because, you know, that'll be like Larry Holmes against Muhammad Ali, you know. And that's exactly what he said. I just wanted to pick up an article and read exactly what he says. He said he wouldn't fight him. Larry Holmes is one of the greatest heavyweights. He doesn't get the respect he deserves. How he beat Muhammad Ali, he effed him up. I think it's because of that. And I agree with him. First of all, Larry Holmes is one of my favorite all-time heavyweights, period. Like, maybe like top 3. And with that being said, Manny Pacquiao recently had an exhibition. I didn't even watch it, but he had an exhibition. And, you know, he called out Terrence Bud Crawford and Errol Spence. And look, man, I don't even know if I covered that. I don't even know if I made any videos on that. But I'll tell you now that we're here, I'm not interested in a fight at all with Manny Pacquiao against any elite welterweight at this point. We've seen him lose to Ugas already. And to go back to the Keith Thurman fight, I think that would have been the perfect exit from the sport, you know? And Spence coming out and saying that he's not interested in Pacquiao, I think that was the right thing to say. You know, I think that we know that Pacquiao has a name, and yes, it still would be a decent win over on your resume to have that name on your resume. But really, do you want to beat a 43, or I don't know how old Manny is at this point, but I don't think it's a good fight. You know, I didn't even think Pacquiao was gonna win the fight before, you know, because I thought the break from Keith after the Keith Thurman fight was just too long, that period. You know, and the same with the Ugas. You know, I thought that was just too long of a break for Manny Pacquiao. All right. But regardless, I think Spence has taken and said the right thing by saying that and not wanting to take that fight. But while we're there, Bud Crawford had tweeted directly at Spence, "Hey, if you're willing to spin the block, I'm still here." And he's basically referring to Errol Spence, saying that the fight didn't work out, but maybe we'll spin the block later. You know, this is after Crawford agreed to fight David Avanesian. Errol Spence said that he's willing to spin the block later. Well, Crawford is putting it out there like, listen, I'm still here if you're still willing to spin the block, which means, you know, let's try to make this fight happen later. I already told you guys my stance on this whole thing. I don't think the fight between Errol Spence and Terrence Bud Crawford happens next. And I don't believe that that fight happens at 147. I think the whole idea of this being an undisputed fight at 147 has passed. You know, after the failed negotiations between the two fighters this year, and after Bud went on to fight David Avanesian, I think it's over. You know, Spence has 3 titles. All titles has mandatories. You know, I know Ortiz and Stanionis are going to fight each other. Most likely Spence is probably going to fight Keith Thurman. And Bud is probably going to fight, I don't know who's Bud going to fight next. I have no idea what Bud is going to do. I don't know if he's going to reach back out to BLK Prime. We don't know in the future. But Bud is still interested. Spence, according to him, what he said in his interview the other day, he doesn't seem to be sure about fighting Bud at this point, you know? He doesn't seem to be too sure about it, at least not in the interviews that he's given. Again, I don't think Spence is fully in control on who he could fight, you know? So, regardless, I just hope that the second time, and I think they will revisit trying to make the fight. I think when they do revisit trying to make the fight, I hope from the PBC and Al Heyman side of things that they come with a more realistic contract for the both of them. And when I say that, I don't want to say for Bud, for the both of them, because even though Spence is already a PBC fighter and he basically agrees with whatever way Al goes, I still feel that they're both worth more than what was offered and not having a guarantee. I think they're both worth more than that. You know, Spence, I heard him in interviews, he pretty much says, I go with what Al tells me, you know. Whereas Bud, at this point, he's kind of a free agent, all right, and he's looking, you know, he's on his way out. He's in his fourth quarter of his career. You know, he's looking to make big money, and he's not looking to make any less than what he was previously making over at Top Rank. All right. So let's see what happens, you know. And final and last but not least, in a similar situation, a very similar situation, Regis Prograis and Jose Ramirez is off. All right. Ramirez has come out and said that he's not gonna take the fight with Regis Prograis. Now, if you guys didn't know, Regis Prograis is a new WBC champion at 140. Right? He recently stopped Jose Zepeda and won that vacant title. Now, originally, Jose Zepeda and Jose Ramirez were supposed to have their rematch to fight for that title. They were due to fight each other for that title. Jose Ramirez pulled out of the fight. He said he had his wedding with his wife and he had some family time. So Jose Ramirez, let me look him up real quick. Jose, because I don't remember when he was last time he was in a ring. I think it was against Jose Pedraza, but I want to check and just make sure I'm right on that. Okay, Jose Pedraza was his last fight in March, all right? And the last fight before that is when he lost the undisputed fight to Josh Taylor early 2021 or May 2021. All right, so Jose Ramirez had one fight this year. He fought Pedraza, won a decision there. Remember watching the fight, didn't look great, but he won the fight. With that being said, Pedraza was supposed to fight Zepeda. Pedraza pulled out because of his wedding. Regis Prograis got the opportunity to fight for the title, which was well-deserved. He fights Zepeda, stops him, and now he's WBC champion. And Ramirez is still the mandatory. He's the first mandatory. The second mandatory is Teofimo Lopez, who just beat Sandor Martin in a very controversial split decision win. All right, so he's the second mandatory in line, just in case Jose Ramirez didn't take the fight, which he's not now. Right now, according to Ramirez, I was able to watch their Ellie Setback Instagram live back and forth. It was very long. It was very hard to hear because there was a lot of background noise. It didn't seem like it was a planned interview between the two. Like the three of them was there. You had Robert Garcia in the background. It was a lot of noise in the background, but I did get to hear a lot of things. And I was listening to this and it made me feel like, at first when I heard that Ramirez pulled out of the fight, I was kind of disappointed because I felt like this fight should have happened before. You know, I remember Regis Prograis winning this fight earlier, you know. With that being said, listening to Ramirez, he's talking a lot about the business, the money, you know, the things that we do hate. But I do, as much as I hate that the business of boxing and the politics of boxing gets in the way, I think when fighters are at a certain stage in their careers and they made a certain amount of money, Jose Ramirez is 30 years old. He's not really old. He's still in the prime of his career, possibly. But with that being said, listening to him talk, I kind of understand why he doesn't want to take the fight. And yes, it's still a duck because he's turning the fight down. But I understand why he's not taking the fight. As opposed to Regis. Regis is more like, listen, I'm a fighter. He keeps repeating, I'm not really concerned about the business and stuff like that. Jose, when it comes to the business side of things, even though he's younger, he seems like he's a lot more mature when it comes to that area. He's like, look, he's talking about what he's accomplished, the amount of money he's made in previous fights. He said he hasn't made less than $1 million since 2018. We're going into 2023. All right, so I understand him being with Top Rank. He has options. Richard Comey is a name that popped up. We don't know if it's official. He didn't say that was his next opponent. He said it could be, right? But we know that Top Rank has other fighters. Arnold Barbosa. They have other options out there for Jose Ramirez to fight and to get paid. You know, so he's at a place where he's in a space where WBC, him being a mandatory, and it's basically the rule that Regis Prograis gets 65% of the purse, and Jose Ramirez get 35. So Jose Ramirez is looking at this as a loss already. He's like 35%. This should be 50-50 based on what he's done, the amount of money he's made. Now, even though I am kind of siding with Regis Prograis simply because Jose Ramirez had the opportunity to fight for that title, and he pulled out where Regis stepped in and fought for the title. So on the end of it all, I agree with Regis because Regis made the call to say like, yo, this is a title fight. This is important to me. I want this fight. I know Ramirez said he had his wedding, and I understand that family is big to me. I already know family is a huge sacrifice to my channel, because I take care of family. But with that being said, Regis took the opportunity that you fell back from. All right. Not only that, even if it's true that Ramirez has sold or made a little bit more throughout his career, or he's had better events, as far as people coming and paying tickets for his events, I get it. That's cool. I understand that. On a business tip, you've been more successful, where Regis has been bouncing around, Ludabella and promotions. I've seen him on Top Rank cards. I've seen him on Showtime, back and forth. I've seen him on DAZN. I've seen him on Triller. I've seen him on Probellum. I've seen him, he kind of fights anywhere. So when he says, I'm a fighter, I'm not really into all the business and all the money, well, at this point, you kind of should be. Because at the end of the day, when if you lose, these fans, they love you as a fighter. Like me, he's been my favorite fighter at 140 since Bud went up. But at the end of the day, you got to fight for your future. You have to make as much money as you can, because these fans are very cutthroat. So, and this is where I stand with Ramirez when he says, like, look, the money has to be right. But Regis is saying, how you know the purse bid? How do you know it was going to be so low? How do you know it was going to make that much money? And they're going back and forth. But it's not a disrespectful argument. It's long, it's loud, that sounding is not good. You can't hear everything. But when Jose Ramirez talks about the business and he's like, look, I've been making this amount of money. So if you're going to go and fight Regis Prograis, and we already know how dangerous Prograis is. We already know that. He's like, look, I'm not going to just jump in this situation making 35% of the purse. And I think he even went into further detail about that purse. He said it's not even really 65-35. I can't remember what the numbers were, but he was saying something like, yeah, it's like 45 this, 10% this. He's talking big, and Regis didn't really want to hear all that. He's like, listen, I don't know all about it. He kept saying, I don't know about the business. I think he really needs to know about the business. But with that being said, he also said, Ramirez said, look, I don't take the fight. Do you think T.O.'s going to take the fight for 35%? No, he's not going to take the fight for 35%. And I believe him. I don't think T.O. is going to take that fight for that amount of money. T.O. could be an option for Ramirez. Ramirez said, I might even fight T.O. because we're both top rank. Why don't you have Probellum to send me an offer? But you're the mandatory. So that's where, like, you got to draw a line with some of the things Ramirez is saying. But it's like, look, you're the mandatory. If you turn the fight down, Regis can go off and fight somebody else too. Now, it might not be Teofimo Lopez, but with the amount of talking that Lopez has been doing when it comes to Regis Prograis, maybe T.O. should fight him. I think that would be a big mistake if T.O. were to fight Regis Prograis. And that's just my opinion. I've heard both sides of the field. I remember when T.O. was undefeated and we were talking about that fight, if T.O. were to move up. And there were people out there that said T.O. would win. But things have changed. He's lost to Cambosos. You know, he had a very disputed win against Sandor Martin, who I think would give everybody trouble, including Regis Prograis. I don't think that Sandor Martin would be easy for anybody at this stage. All right, but with all that being said, I would have loved to see the fight. But I would have, if I ever did a breakdown, I would have been predicting Regis to win that one. You gotta also remember, and I know styles make fights, but Regis Prograis got two common opponents with Jose Ramirez, you know, and if we really think about it, Regis Prograis did much better against those two common opponents. I mean, Regis had a very disputed loss to Josh Taylor. Okay? Very disputed loss. All right? That was a very close fight. Even if you think Josh won, it was a very close fight. And then he stops Jose Cepeda, who had a very disputed loss against Jose Ramirez. You know? That was one of those fights where, you know, it was a majority decision, but that's one of those fights where, you know, I think Cepeda won the first half of the fight and Ramirez won the second half, you know. Some people say they thought Ramirez lost the fight. But we saw what Regis did to Cepeda. He stopped him. All right, so with that being said, you know, I know Jose feels that he's made more money than Regis, and I get that. But, you know, he is a champion, and even if you're further ahead financially, I don't know how much further ahead he really is as far as their careers, as far as fame and ticket sales and stuff like that. Maybe he is. I don't know the numbers. I really don't know all of the numbers. All right, because I'm not an expert at the gate and ticket sales and stuff like that. I'm not. All right, and purses. I'm not an expert on that. I know Regis has made money, and you know I know that Jose has made money. He probably did make a little bit more money, you know. Being on Top Rank, he probably has. All right, now if it's his call that he wants to pull out of the fight or he doesn't want to take the fight because he's not happy with the numbers and the purses, that's on him. That's totally on him. He does have options. All right, but now when we start talking legacy, we're going to always remember that you had an opportunity to fight for a title and become a two-time champ, you know, former unified champ, but you chose not to do it, you know, because you're looking for the money, and there's nothing wrong with that. And honestly, you know why I can't really get on him is because at least he's being honest. It's like, I'm ducking, but I'm telling you why. I need more money than that. I'm not going to fight you for that amount, that percentage. It's not for me. I'll do it for 50-50. Regis said something like, I think they asked him, I think Ellie asked him, hey, would you do it 55-45? And Regis said yes. But Regis also said, listen, there's no point in doing all this back and forth unless we're going to really fight. You know, I think Regis would probably be willing to come down. Maybe they can double back and try to work something out. But honestly, I don't believe it. I think if they were both top rank, then maybe. But being that Regis, you know, I don't know if he has a multi-fight deal with Pro Bellum. I don't know if this is just a one fight off. I don't know. But all I don't know when it comes to the sanctioning body, you know, if being that they don't have the same promoters, it would go to purse bid and they will work it out. But Ramirez just backed out altogether. Like, yo, those numbers are crazy. I'm not doing them. That's his choice. That's his choice. He don't want the fight. He wants to take on top rank fighters. Cool. You know, maybe they'll revisit it later when it makes a little bit more sense. All right. Me personally, I'm not going to get angry about it. I'm not going to rant because I'm just kind of like, I'm used to it. You know, this is what we do. This is part of the game, you know, the business. All right. So that's my views on that, man. Regis Prograis, hopefully they can make the Teofimo Lopez fight, even though I don't think that's much of a safe fight for Teo right now. If we can't get Teo, maybe get a unification somewhere. Everybody's pretty much busy. You know, I'm still waiting to see what Josh Taylor. Oh, Regis Prograis. I mean, not Regis Prograis. Adrian Broner. That's also an option. Because Broner has been saying for a while now he wants that smoke with Regis Prograis. And if Broner comes back and beat Ivan Redcatch, you never know. Maybe, you know, BLK Prime can offer something for Regis Prograis to go over there and fight Adrian Broner on that multi-fight deal. or maybe, you know, Probellum could offer something for Broner. I have no idea. You know, I know Broner has a 3-fight deal. Maybe they can include Regis Prograis somewhere in that 3-fight deal. All right, that's if Ramirez really doesn't work out and Teofimo Lopez doesn't work out as well. All right, so anyway, a lot of opportunities for both fighters. I'm not going to rant and rave. It is what it is. But that's my thoughts on that. And that's it for today's Wave Report. Guys, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Please hit that thumbs up. Share the video if you could. All right, and drop comments. Let me know what you think. And I'll see you guys on the next one. All right, y'all have a good one. Peace.